Wendy, we are ready to go.
Great. Perfect. We will start precisely on time. Welcome to the April 4th Workforce Development Committee meeting. My name is Wendy Strack, chairperson of the committee. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. Committee members will be participating remotely from private, non-public sites. The public may participate in person or remotely or by attending in person at DCA headquarters at 1625 North Market Boulevard, Suite S102. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various items, and the meeting moderator will open the lines as appropriate. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. Moderator, would you please provide the audience instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate time?
Certainly. When the public comment period is opened, I will direct you to click on the hand icon, and that's at the bottom of your WebEx screen if you're on a regular computer. If you are on a mobile device, that hand icon might be behind the 3-dot other options. And if you are a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. I will call on people in the order that they requested to comment. I will give 2 minutes with a 15-second warning if anyone would like to make a comment. And that is the process. We will be displaying instructions on the screen as well.
Thank you. I'd like to now call the meeting to order and ask Christina to call the roll to establish a quorum.
Good afternoon. Wendy Strack.
Present public member.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Good afternoon. Present public member.
Justin Huft.
Present LMFT.
Eleanor Uribe.
Present LCSW member.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Board staff, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, Steve Sodergren, Executive Officer of the board.
Christy Shields, Legal Counsel for the board.
Roseanne Helms, Legislative Manager for the board.
Marlon McManus, Assistant Executive Officer for the board.
Sarita Risso, Special Projects and Research Analyst for the board.
And that's it.
Great. Now is the time for the public to introduce themselves if they would like. This is voluntary. Is there anyone in the room there at DCA from the public who'd like to introduce themselves?
There is our one and only member. Hold on.
Yes, the one and only. Hello, Shanti Ezra, and I'm with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists.
Thank you. Moderator, is there anyone online that would like to introduce themselves?
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to introduce yourself, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. We do have one raised hand from Ben Caldwell. Ben, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Caldwell MFT.
Thank you. And that is the only attendee comment or introduction I have.
Great. Thank you. That takes us to item 3. Consent calendar discussion and possible approval of January 30th, 2025 Workforce Development Committee meeting minutes. Do we have any members wishing to remove or edit any items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Dr. Walker, I'll make a motion to approve I know I have to speak this out. Approval of the January 30th, 2025 Workforce Development Committee meeting minutes. How'd I do?
Perfect.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it. It's Eleanor Uribe.
Great. Thank you. Christina, can you take the vote?
Actually, we need public comment.
Comment.
Oh, thank you. Are there any comments from the public? Anyone in the room, please?
No comments here.
All right. Do we have any comments online? My apologies.
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the motion to approve the minutes, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the minutes? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now Christina, let's take the vote.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is a discussion and possible recommendations regarding restructuring the pathway to licensure for licensed marriage and family therapists, licensed clinical social workers, and licensed professional clinical counselors. Roseanne, would you provide us with the overview?
Yes, thanks, Wendy. So we discussed the proposed language that you see in your packet today. We started discussing that at our last committee meeting, and we talked about the various changes that we could make to the licensing process to both at the same time reduce barriers to licensure while also maintaining public protection. And so we talked about how the licensing and exams, it's a very complex process, and there's a lot of different people in different places in the cycle. So we need to be very mindful and careful of that when we're making changes and talking about implementation in order to ensure that the implementation process is smooth and there are not people disenfranchised or there's not unintended consequences for those already in the process that while we change it. So what we recommended at the last meeting is staff recommended a phased approach where changes are completed in 3 phases. So the first phase, which is what we'll be talking about today, we would make some more general changes to the licensing exam process that we can do without a lot of potentially disruptive effects. They're pretty straightforward changes to implement, and the impacts would be felt pretty much right away. The second phase, the board is separately already in the process of working on transitioning to the AMFTRB national exam as the LMFT clinical exam. So that's a little bit of a shakeup to the exam process that's coming there. And so we kind of split out the third and final phase where we would propose that the board would change the timing of the clinical exams to allow them to be taken earlier. And that's a pretty complex structural change. There's a lot of people in the exam process that could potentially affect. We have to get buy-in from the national exams and to make sure that they're going to allow whatever we propose. So that's a little bit more complicated, which is why we put that in the third phase. So I've outlined the 3 phases. At the last meeting, there was a request for kind of a graphical interpretation of what the timelines for those might be. So we actually came up with a couple of different of attachments that would show that. So attachment B kind of shows it one way of looking at that and the estimated timeframes, and then Steve was nice enough to put together his view of it. So different people kind of see things different ways. So he put together a time frame that's shown in attachment C, which basically shows the same thing in a different way, in a different visual way. And then lastly, in attachment D, I've prepared a summary of once all 3 phases went into effect, what's an overview, what the licensing process would look like at that point. So that's attachment D. So you can see that there in your packet. So I'm going to talk about phase 1 today. That's with the language in attachment A. It makes a number of changes that we would be proposing as a first step here. So changes to the text since the last meeting. We met basically with our exam unit and our legal counsel and got some feedback. So changes that to the text that we looked at last time are shown in blue. New changes since then are shown in green, underline, and strikeouts. So we've made various changes. So I'm going to go through and do an overview of each of them. So one of the proposed amendments we'll be looking at is a change to the timing of the California Law and Ethics exam. We're proposing that associates get to choose when they get to take the California Law and Ethics exam once they're registered. Right now, there's a requirement that they have to take it annually every year in order to renew their registration until it's passed. That can at times create a hardship if somebody forgets or doesn't get a chance to take the exam before their registration renewal is up, then it could potentially delay their registration renewal. So under this proposal, they would just take it when they feel ready. If they don't feel ready to take it their first year, that they could take it their second year, and so on. Originally, when we had put in the requirement that registrants have to take the California Law and Ethics exam every year, it was because the board wanted to make sure that associates were actively attempting to learn and be knowledgeable and proficient in California law and ethics. However, a couple of years ago, the board put in a requirement that all associates must complete 3 hours of CE in California law and ethics each year. That started in 2023. So we believe that public protection is still maintained, even if they're not actively attempting that exam every year. So that's the reasoning behind that. The second change is we really need to put an age limit in for our California law and ethics exam. That exam came into being with the exam restructure in 2016. There's no age limit currently on that exam, and that was fine at the beginning, but we're realizing that there's an issue if we could have people applying eventually with very old California law and ethics exam scores because there's no limit. So the longer that exam, as decades go by, we might have exam scores floating out there, and somebody could apply with a very old score, and then there becomes a concern of is that knowledge still current? So we're proposing a 7-year age limit on the law and ethics exam score. That that matches the current age limit on the clinical exam score is already 7 years, and so we think that kind of lines up with everything. So how that would work is, in order to obtain a subsequent registration number, the applicant must have a passing score on the California law and ethics exam dated no more than 7 years prior to the board's receipt of the application. In addition, when applying for initial licensure, the person would also have to ensure their California law and ethics exam score is no more than 7 years old. The next set of changes is we're proposing to make a change to the registration number length and the time supervised experience hours are valid. Currently, the allowable length of a registration number is 6 years. We're proposing to make that 7 years. Supervised experience hours are also valid for 6 years. We're proposing to make that 7 years as well. This would allow applicants an additional year if they need to take a break while gaining experience hours due to life events or circumstances, which is a common issue that's brought up by those who experience hardships during the licensing process. It'll also align the allowable age of experience hours with the allowable clinical and law and ethics exam scores, both 7 years. So eventually, it'll allow a simpler process when we allow the clinical exam to be taken early in a later phase, because we're going to need to make some pretty major changes there with regard to the hours and how we look at those. So having everything be 7 years kind of lines us up and sets us up to make that change later. And the next thing that this proposal does is adds a exception to the prohibition from working in a private practice with a subsequent registration number. And this is one that we frequently get requests to discuss. The board has discussed this several times over the years. And what it pertains to is what we call the 6-year rule that prohibits an associate with a subsequent registration number from working in a private practice or a professional corporation. So under the proposal, what we would do is we would continue to prohibit associates with a subsequent associate number from working in a private practice generally. However, we would create a process where an associate with a subsequent registration number could request a one-time 2-year hardship extension. And with that extension, they could finish gaining their experience hours in one private practice setting if the supervisor or employer and the associate submit a request to the board providing specified information. And so, like I said, the board has discussed this numerous times over the years, It's an often requested discussion topic because there are individuals who go through a hardship due to unforeseen circumstances, and then they find themselves needing a subsequent registration number, and they find out that they either can't continue at their current job because it's a private practice, or they can't find a job anywhere but a private practice, but they can't work in a private practice. We had discussed most recently, the most recent time we discussed the 6-year rule was at the August 2022 board meeting. We discussed possibly removing it altogether. However, both the board and stakeholders were not in favor of that. There were concerns about potential exploitation of associates by private practice. And so there was not support to move forward with that request. So today's proposal strikes a little bit more of a limited approach that strikes a kind of a compromise that could apply in times of hardship, but not to everybody. And then finally, the final set of changes are mainly some technical cleanup changes. We're deleting a couple of sections that was no longer needed, some fees that are obsolete. We're making a clarification in the law that's that somebody that's passed a clinical exam from another state before the board would typically grant eligibility to take a clinical exam, that will still accept that score even though they took the exam too early. Right now, the law doesn't really make it clear what happens in that situation, so we're trying to make it clearer. We're deleting the requirement that if an applicant is unable to pass the clinical exam within 7 years of their initial attempt, right now they have to go back and pass the California Law and Ethics exam again before they can continue. We think placing an age limit on the California Law and Ethics exam score renders this obsolete. They need to make sure that both of their exam scores are current within the past 7 years. So we don't feel that that particular requirement is needed anymore. So that's pretty much the extent of the proposal. There are a couple of changes that legal counsel has, since we turned in the materials, legal counsel has recommended. So I'm going to go through those really quick because they're not in your packet. There's some language on, I'm just going to point you to 4980.399A, subsection A, where it says a passing score on the law and ethics exam shall be dated no more than 7 years prior to the board's receipt of the application. Legal counsel suggested not stating that a passing score shall be dated no more than 7 years. Their point being a passing score doesn't have a date. So we're needing to reword the language to say the law and ethics exam shall be passed no more than 7 years. So the various variations of that language occur in about 5 places throughout the proposed text. So wanted to make note that we have been recommended to make that particular change. Also, in the private practice exemption language, legal counsel has recommended that we make a change there, and that is on page 4-15 of your packet. It's 4984.01, and it starts on 4-14E, but the actual change is on 4-15. So there's some language in there that says on the form that they need to provide why the applicant was unable to complete their licensure process within 7 years. And we said, which may include but not limited to, and then we gave some examples, extended medical leave, family caregiving, difficulties finding employment. So we want to move that language up into the paragraph that says the board shall grant the extension provided the application is signed and that the information required is provided. And then we want to say, and good cause is demonstrated, and then use those definitions as defining good cause. So we would say good cause may include, but is not limited to, extended medical leave, family caregiving responsibilities, difficulties finding employment. And then we wanted to throw in or circumstances beyond the control of the applicant, so that there's a little bit more wiggle room to make that determination. So that's the other sort of change that we want to draft into the language per legal suggestion. So that's a lot. In terms of next steps, language still needs to be drafted for the LCSW and LPCC practice acts. For those 2 practice acts, the language will be substantially similar. There might be some adjustments based on slight differences in those practice acts structurally. So we'll have to go through that and take a look at how that language compares. So That's what we need to do for LCSW and LPCC. For LEP, the LEP licensure process is structured substantially differently for than the other license types. So they don't have a law and ethics exam. They don't have a registration period. So most of the changes being discussed here don't apply at all to LEP. The only one that it does is that LEPs have a requirement that their experience hours are valid for 6 years. So staff would recommend that we draft LEP statute so that its experience hours are gained from 7 years. The only other thing that would apply to LEPs is the age of the exam score. We're making a proposed legislative change this year that sets the age of the exam score at 7 years. So that's already being done. So with that, that's what I foresee as the next steps. And then you can discuss whether or not you want this proposal to come back once it's drafted for all the license types to this committee, or if you feel comfortable with it moving on to the Policy and Advocacy Committee. So with that, I will open it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Roseanne. Do we have any comments or questions from board members? Mr. Huft, and then Dr. Walker.
Thank you. So thank you for putting this together and for addressing what we had asked for in this last meeting. I appreciate that. Just two quick questions. Are you planning on having the committee and committees and subsequently the board approve all changes for LMFT, LCSW, LPCC, LEP at once when they're done? Or are we doing these incrementally each license?
It would be, the proposal would be all at once for all 4 license types. And the reason being, we can't really change this in terms of when we run the bill to be equitable. We can't change it for one license type and not the others.
Understood. Great. Thank you. And then last meeting, I had expressed concerns. I think board member Uribe had also agreed with them that phase 3 seems more reasonable before phase 2. I think that the response was generally just like, no, that's not possible. It's too much labor is required. Now that we've had a few more months, can you speak maybe a little bit to why is the order of 2 and 3 the way it is, particularly with this half a decade long response basically to get everything finished?
Yeah, it's not really that too much labor is required. It's that there's a lot of nuances in the changing the timing of the clinical exam, that it's going to take some more time. There's a lot of people in that process, and we're going to kind of change how we sort of lock in hours. And so we need to be really careful about that in terms of not disenfranchising anybody or having any negative consequences. That's a big structural change that we don't want to rush. We're ready to basically move forward with this part of the proposal right now. We want to do the other piece very mindfully. So that's part of the reason. The other reason is we're already pretty much ready. We're already working through the transition to the MFT national exam. There's some brief changes that need to go with that are basically not necessarily compatible with doing both at the same time. So we think that it can be done reasonably quickly after, if everything goes smoothly and there's no objections, and if the licensing, we basically have to negotiate with the exam vendors as well. So that might take some time as well. But we don't feel like that it would be a good idea for a number of reasons to do those 2 changes exactly at the same time.
Yeah, it's the unintended consequences that they were always worried about, and it could shake up and cause a lot of issues, I think, with all those changes at once for the actual candidates or the applicants. So that's why we're really taking out in concern. It's a plan, so we don't know. I mean, maybe it could be sooner than later, but we definitely will take that in consideration. But it's really the unintended consequences. We don't want to change things so quickly that people will get lost in the actual pathway, and it will cause more issues with it than the benefits that we are wanting to get. So.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Walker.
Thank you very much. I was just giving some thought to Justin's and Uribe's suggestions for number 3. And I'm just wondering if it is possible to somehow think outside of the box here, because if I'm not mistaken, there may be a little bit of overlap there. So I'm wondering if it's possible, and I'm just throwing this out there. When you look at phase 3, if that can be broken down as a work in progress, just break that down a little bit and see what might be able to be integrated into before phase 2. I think that's what you're saying, Justin. 3 goes before 2. Yeah. Just maybe play with that a little bit, because I understand Justin and Eleanor's concerns, and I think they're warranted. So maybe we could just think outside the box a little bit and just break down 3 a little bit further and see what might be able to be integrated sooner rather than later. Again, this is not my purview, but it's just a thought. So I wanted to throw that in there. And then to also, again, thank Roseanne and Steve for this graphical interpretation. I think the visuals and putting it into phases is very helpful for many to have a greater understanding of what we're doing. And so it's my comments. My question is, I do appreciate getting a legal counsel's recommendations on the language that was presented. As you mentioned, Roseanne, it wasn't in our package. So I'm wondering, I guess this is a question for Christina. Would this be in our meeting minute notes for the next time? Is that where this might come into?
Yes, this is Christy Shields, legal counsel. So yeah, we're recording everything and we'd be documenting those recommended changes. And I think I just made those recommendations for clarity and also the requirements for a good cause. I thought the way it was drafted might be a little bit too open-ended, and that way everyone would qualify for a hardship waiver. And that's really not why that option was being proffered. It was being proffered for people that have real problems meeting requirements within the time frame they've been given, and making sure that we're not having an open-ended extension there. And so I just wanted to tighten that language up a bit. But yes, we're going to be documenting all the recommendations, and if you agree with them, it would be part of the motion that you
wonderful
make.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
I can agree with that last comment as far as making it so that not everybody, because I think the way it was stated was all applicants that have something basically out of their control. So I mean, in a sense, that could be used pretty broadly. And I was looking at the timeline. I think when they originally talked about this rolling out, it sounded like it was up to four years. So when I looked at the timeline, it looks like it's basically would roll out within 3 years at most, and that would be at the beginning of January. Is that correct?
So that's an estimate. All of this has to go, all 3 phases have to go through the legislative process, and some have to go through the regulatory process. So pretty much anything can happen with legislation and regulation. There's no guarantees, but that's what we think. If there's no major roadblocks, meaning like, somebody doesn't decide they're in opposition to a major part of the change and we have to start from scratch. Like if everything goes as planned, that's what we feel like we can do reasonably.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the public? Any in the room there?
Yes.
Hello again, Shanti Ezrin with CAMT. I just wanted to start by thanking staff for the work on the attachments. Took a look at all the attachments and the visual summary, the descriptions, the estimated timelines. They're all very helpful to understand because there's a lot of moving parts to this. So found those to be really helpful. Thank you. That all being said, we continue to be in support of the proposed changes to the licensing process and the breakdown of the 3 phases to ensure a smooth implementation process. We've also took a look at the proposed language in attachment A and have no concerns to share at this time. I want to add on just a couple more things. I know we're focused on phase 1 today, but I wanted to take the chance to thank staff and the committee as well for continuing to prioritize the adoption of the AMFT-RB national exam without delay in phase 2. On the conversation regarding the timing of phase 3 and phase 2, we just like to encourage staff to continue refining and working through the phase 3 proposal so that when it is time to implement those, everything can happen expeditiously. Thank you.
Great. Seeing none other in the room, moderator, do we have any online comments?
Certainly, let's take a look. If anyone would like to make a comment, you can click on the hand icon, and that will be on the bottom row of your WebEx screen, or if you're on a mobile device, it might be behind the 3-dot other options. And our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. And we do have a raised hand from Ben Caldwell. Ben, I'll send you a request to unmute. And you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Ben Caldwell, MFT. I want to second the comments from Kampft. Also thank Roseanne for the work that you have done in pulling this together. I agree that those visuals are actually very helpful in understanding the sort of phased implementation process. I share the concerns of Board Member Huft and Dr. Walker that really focus on how can we move this forward as quickly as possible, all 3 phases here, but I think that also speaks to the value of all 3 phases that you're talking about. So, you know, if there's anything that I or my company can do to be helpful to the board in advancing these proposals as quickly as possible, certainly happy to assist in whatever way that I can. In the meantime, just thank you for your continued good work. And if there are ways to think outside the box, to break down the steps further, to get some pieces of some phases implemented sooner, certainly would support that. These are all good, important changes that will help our associates and licensees to serve Californians. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Roseanne and Steve, I just also want to echo the comments about the visual. It made it much easier to understand the way things are sort of running concurrently, even though they are different phases and they look like they're moving independently, but there are things happening concurrently. But of course, we do always share as much as we can advance to get these done as quickly as possible. If there are opportunities to streamline any of these, we would certainly welcome that as well. Any other comments from board members? And Roseanne, do you need a motion from us?
Yeah, so I've kind of outlined the motion under the recommendation. I think that we would make the discussed changes, which include the changes to the passing score dated language and also the private practice exemption, adding the good cause language that I discussed. I think the main decision for the committee aside from that is, do you want the completed, so we'll take this back, we'll draft language for the LCSW and the LPCC Practice Acts, and then to a lesser extent, the LEP Practice Act. The LEP Practice Act is actually going to have to be drafted based on language that's running in a bill this year because we're changing that section substantially. But so we're going to be drafting that language. Do you want it to come back to this committee for another look, or do you want it to move on to the Policy and Advocacy Committee, which would be the next step after this committee before it goes to board?
I think I would be inclined for it to go to Policy and Advocacy, but I'll look for any feedback from other board members. Okay, everybody's all right with going to Policy and Advocacy next? Okay. Yep, sounds good, Roseanne.
Okay, and then yeah, the next step was, so it would go to P&A, and then once it came out of P&A, you would see this again at the board meeting for full board approval once it got there.
Okay. All right. So we need a motion then.
Do you want me to read the motion?
Sure, thank you.
The motion would be to direct staff to make any discussed changes, as I just noted, those two, and any non-substantive changes to the language shown in attachment A, and then to also draft the necessary corresponding amendments required to implement phase 1 for the LCSW and LPCC Practice Acts. Also draft changes to change the allowable age of experience hours for the LEP Practice Act from 6 years to 7 years, and then to bring the completed proposal to the Policy and Advocacy Committee for consideration.
Okay, would anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion as stated by Roseanne.
Okay, do we have a second?
Staff's recommendation, yeah.
Justin Huff, second.
Okay, great. I think now we need to go back for public comment on the motion. Do we have anybody in the room?
No.
Moderator, do we have anyone online wishing to make a comment?
This is the moderator. If you'd like to make a comment on the motion, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And if you are on a mobile device, you might need to go behind the three-dot other options to find the hand icon. And if you're a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. Are there any comments on the motion? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and Christina, would you take the vote, please?
Yes, I will. Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Justin Huff,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the discussion and possible recommendations regarding education survey for educators and associates. And Steve, would you provide us with the overview?
I would be happy to. At the last Workforce Committee meeting, we talked about doing a review of the LPCC and MFT education requirements and to look for possible improvements or look for ways that we might want to amend those current requirements. And so we are proposing to do a survey to collect some more information to see where this conversation might better be led through the input. And what we're proposing here are there two surveys, one for educators and one for what we're saying is associate registrants, recent graduates, even actually individuals in a program. I don't know how might be able to reach out to them, but we'll see. And what the survey is really trying to identify concerns or issues with the current education standards or licensed education programs, and asking the educators and the registrants or associates their concerns or see if they see any issues in the current requirements or their educational program. And so the education survey will collect very basic general demographic information, but then also focuses on their input on current education requirements, practicum or field experience components. And then additionally, we're putting in there, I know we've talked about it in one of the committee meetings, looking at maybe a formal process for approving actual programs in California. It's a thought that we just want to see what, it's something that we might discuss in the very far future, but it's something we wanted to get some input on right now. The student survey will also collect general demographic information, and it'll ask questions to asking them the extent to which they believe their education program prepared them for licensure. What was their experience obtaining practicum placement? And also if they believe there's any concerns they have with education programs and practicum placement in general, and really to see if they believe that their current educational program has been assisting them to move on to licensure. With the approval of this, what I wanted to get today was to get your comments or any ideas on the survey questions that are in attachment A and B. And once we do that, I was hoping to get your approval to move forward with this on a kind of a quick basis, basically giving us the option of making those changes and releasing the survey. If we do, plan to release the survey sometime in May and then report back the findings on the next meeting in July 31st. So with that said, is there any comments or questions or concerns?
Thank you, Steve. Looks like Mr. Huft has a question or comment. So we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. Steve, who is drafting these questions?
Staff are.
Okay. I have a lot of suggestions, so I will go through them slowly, and you let me
Okay.
know if you need me to repeat anything or email you them. Broadly, I would recommend changing all relevant questions to Likert scale questions. So assessing degree of confidence, how much do they strongly agree or disagree, the frequency of things. A lot of these are just binary yes or no questions, which loses a lot of important data. And that's not necessary. That, there's no reason in this survey to be losing data when we can capture higher quality data. For educators, I would change question 8 to be probably sliding scales, something like that, regardless of if question 7 is answered. Right now, it looks like it's set up. Only if they say no will they answer the next question. But all of those areas could also be assessed for the degree to which they need improvement. That would give better, I think, quality data. I do worry a little that right now, maybe inadvertently, the survey is set up to basically just say everything is fine. And that's sort of the outcome of these sorts of binary options. I would also shift away on question 22 from a binary. I think this is a good example of why you need Likert scale questions or something like that. If you're asking a professor, have your students face challenges, I wouldn't even know where to begin in answering that. Is it any student literally ever? In which case, how could you not say yes, right? But if not, then you're asking people to sort of do this internal calculus to figure out how much of a problem needs to exist before they say yes, and then subsequently ask the main challenges. So I think rather than that, we need to be asking the degree to which we have challenges, the frequency of which we have challenges, things like that, severity. I would also ask questions about, rather than just, are your students prepared? I would ask, to what extent are students prepared to serve the following diverse populations? And I would ask about racial ethnic minorities. I would ask about LGBTQ clients. And I would ask about rural communities. And then the parallel is I would also ask those same things for licensees and students. To what extent do you feel prepared to serve the following diverse populations? For educators, I would also ask, to what extent does your program face challenges in maintaining qualified faculty or supervisors, followed by what are those challenges? Because we are missing a lot of the institutional pressures and obstacles that may create problems in some of the pipeline problems we've been talking about. And so I want to try and assess some of that as much as is reasonable. Does all of that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it does.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent clarifications there. Thank you. Any other board members who want to offer comments?
I would say, I would, since you're going to be giving the survey, it just seems like it would be a great opportunity to get more information or even suggestions. So maybe an example might be, say, with the educators in number 8 or 11, it says, yes, to check the areas, and then it says other, but instead I would almost say in each of those areas, I mean, they're the people that are using it. So we want to see what's the feedback. I mean, I know that could be a lot of information, but I mean, hey, we have AI, maybe they can put it together quickly and give us a synopsis of what was shared. But I just feel like there's multiple questions that can seek feedback from them, versus just yes, no, or, or even, the Likert style. I mean, that could give you a gauge, but like I said, I would like to see even a little bit more feedback from them.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Walker.
Thank you. Just I was just wondering, what is our reach here? What is the potential number of folks that we're hoping to survey from either of these? I'm just curious to what the reach is.
The reach for educators, the last time we've done an educator survey, our reach, I think, was in the hundreds. And we're going to reach out there for the registrants or that kind of associates, that level. We do get pretty good feedback since there's 30,000 of them that we'll be actually working to get the survey out to. About more than 30,000 actually. So,
okay. Have we done any similar surveys to this?
yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And was it a pretty good outcome?
We get a pretty good response, actually. Well, the one we did for the Workforce Development Committee, we received, I mean, what you consider good, but 3,000 responses on our work on the first one that we did. Since then, we've actually, for the educators, we're working on developing more contacts with the educators. And so I think that will be an improvement for this. And it'll be good to test this out to see our reach on that. But we do have a pretty good reach on our surveys. The one thing that I am kind of up against, though, is we're doing our strategic planning, and that survey is going out in the actually next week. And so it's the timing of that. I don't want to overload people with surveys. So waiting a few weeks maybe to put this out, but sometime before July 31st, I would hope. So, I mean, so I can report on July 31st. So sometime in, May or June. So.
May or June. Okay, sounds good. And also, when you said that, what came to mind was, are you keeping track of the folks that you're reaching when you're sending out these surveys? Like, for example, you said done something similar in the past. Are we sending it out to the same group, or have you added to the group? Have anything changed in the populations that we're reaching? Or are we sending it out to the same folks?
So we send it out. The method of what we'll be doing is we will send this. Usually what we do is we'll definitely put it on our social media page and then, do a frequent update on that. So every other week or every week, depending on what the time frame we have to work with, is to give notices that there is the survey out there. We also use our listserv. So we'll send it out to our listserv individuals, and then we do have another educator listserv. So just to pointedly actually be able to send it out to them. So we're really touching, I'm trying to think I don't remember the numbers in our listserv, but definitely social media also. And then all the associations are very good about kind of spreading the word and passing on the actual, the survey notices and such. So that actually capitalizes on our reach.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not making any suggestions or recommendations, but I would be interested in knowing, are you capturing new voices? Is it more diverse? I'm
Yeah.
just curious, where I'm going with that.
No, I know. And it's kind of hard for us to do since we don't, it's really just, it's an anonymous survey. So
Yeah.
that's.
But who you're, okay, yeah, I'll leave it alone.
No, I
But
know, I give you. I'm trying to think how we can. I will keep that in mind, though, to definitely figure out.
New energy, more voices, more diverse, more,
I know this will be anonymous, but I was wondering if there's a way of maybe even putting a note there, if you would, if you have additional feedback and would like to, maybe provide it as needed, check this box, or put your name here or contact us at this number. Because I mean, that might be helpful to have like people who would be open to just providing feedback, whether the educators or, I know we have our different organizations, but not all, most are not represented, I would say.
That's a good, well, I know we have like the open-ended questions on all our surveys we like to try to do, and it's, when you get the 3,000 open-ended responses, it's great, but it's a lot to go through. But I think what you're saying too is that it's a good idea. I think I'm trying to think of how to. So like if you would like to talk to us more about, these, talk one-on-one or something, is that what you're saying? Kind of, this is another way to reach out to us, or?
Yeah, well, if like say there was some people who are out there and they want to just give more input, maybe they're from the education, public, private, and they would like to be available, maybe even as needed. Hey, here's a group of people that is available to kind of throw something out towards and see what they think, since they're in the field. I'm just saying, how is there a way of capturing people that have responded to the survey that might be willing to provide more input?
And actually, that's a good, you know what, I think so the other idea that I was thinking about proposing at one of the next meetings is doing a kind of a listening session too, to offer not only through the survey, but also offer a session where people can actually provide verbal feedback on certain topics that we have. And so this could be a good chance to do that, saying, if we were to have something like an open session, would you like to participate, or would you, and that would actually, okay. Does that sound something like?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe not just that one time, maybe there could be more times. Just, it would be nice to have like some actually ongoing dialogue somewhere, even if it's yearly or somewhere. I mean, just so that we can have an active, just be able to be hearing what is being said and what's being practiced.
Okay.
Oh,
Christie's got it.
okay. This is Christy Shields, legal counsel again. I thought also maybe to add a little more disclaimer information at the beginning of the survey, because one of the things you want to do, even though it says survey, is make sure people understand it's a voluntary process. And so something like your responses to this survey are voluntary. All answers will be pooled for reporting purposes and no individual person will be identified. And then add something about if they have questions, that this is where they can direct those questions, like an email address or phone numbers or whatever for contact information for staff at the board.
Okay, Mr. Huff.
I want to circle back to listening sessions because we've talked about that in previous meetings, both committee and board meetings. And we've talked about the importance of pulling on students specifically as they're like currently in that pipeline to licensure. And one thing I want to note is like the existing survey research and focus group research is pretty clear that if there's not incentives for participation, you disproportionately have upper middle class white men participating. And if you're opening up a listening session or listening sessions, multiple across the state, I do worry a little that the most marginalized people in this pipeline are not going to be represented. And I would encourage, to the extent that it's possible, Steve, for the board to be offering some sort of incentives, so we are not just asking people to labor for no cost while we extract their ideas, their time, et cetera.
I know. Unfortunately, I wish we had incentives for that. But I do hear you. And I think though, not that this it definitely doesn't address the issues that you're talking about, but I mean, these are just open forums, but yes, who would attend, I don't know. So, okay.
And just to clarify, am I hearing you correctly that the board has no ability to offer any sort of incentives in the form of fee reduction or anything?
No, it would have to go through a legislative or regulatory process to be able to do that. Yeah, that's the.
You know what I've seen work well or better is even doing an in-person group. I know at least in the Valley, there's a lot of diversity. So even if there was scheduling at different places and doing some of these more in person, and I know we're even offering the Zoom option, but maybe you might have more participation.
No, that's a good point too. The other thing that it would go hand in hand in that is actually we have reached out just kind of reaching out to educators to see about hosting meetings at their school sites, or if they want to open them up. And so that might be something we could actually get a little more. It might help out there in that.
And as far as incentives, I mean, I don't know if we had pens or the sticker. I mean, that's not.
We were just talking about that. It's like now they put that away a long time ago.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, in these situations, or to get people to come up to our conference tables at association meetings, we really have nothing to give out other than great information and a smile. So, but no, thank you for all these.
Sure.
This is good.
Great, thank you. Don't think you need a motion from us, correct, on this?
No motion. So, looking at the questions, are you okay with me definitely looking at the Likert scale on a lot of those? Taking some of the other suggestions down, providing feedback, getting maybe a question on there if for additional feedback, maybe even asking them if they're willing to give us their contact, or provide an email where they can actually reach us on that, and then I'm sorry. Yeah, we can follow up with them. And then also the suggestions about the more disclosure in the beginning, it's all voluntary. And would you be okay if I made changes? I think because I would have to bring this back to the July 31st meeting, if we can do that, or I don't know if you want to do it sooner.
I'll look to my colleagues for thoughts on that. It seems to me that the direction's pretty clear, and you have the recording of the meeting as well to go back and reference. So I'm not sure that we need to see it again before it goes out. Is there a comfort level with that, folks? Okay.
Okay.
Seeing no objections there.
Okay.
Should we go to public comment in the room?
Yes, there is one.
Oh, okay. Hello again, Shanti Ezrin with CAMPT. Thank you so much for your work on this. Wanted to continue to share that we're supportive of the holistic review of education requirements to make sure that content is up to date, content is appropriate, and content ensures an equitable pathway for licensure to all applicants while maintaining consumer protection. For the surveys, we think the surveys are a great idea and appreciate all the feedback that we heard today from committee members. Like Steve had mentioned, when the surveys are finalized and ready to be distributed, CAMPT is more than happy to help share that with our members. Thank you.
Thank you. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
Thank you. Yes, we do, but I'll give the instructions again for the rest. If you'd like to make a comment, you can click on the hand icon. That's typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen or behind 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. If you're a call-in user and you'd like to make a comment, you can press *3 to raise your hand. And our first commenter is Ben Caldwell. Ben, I'm going to send you a request to unmute. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Ben Caldwell, MFT. I want to second everything that Mr. Ezrin said on behalf of CAMPT. And also on the content of the survey, wanted to start with a point of praise. I really appreciate that the way that this content is written, it asks people not only about what they might want to add, but also what they might think it would be okay to take away. In surveys like this, there's often kind of an unstated assumption that education requirements can only move in one direction. And the fact is that as we've gone from 36 units in a degree requirement to 48 and then 60, we've made mental health licenses a lot harder to access without any evidence that it's actually made providers more safe or effective in their clinical work. So Steve, I appreciate that you have that in the language here. I did want to note that on let me find it here. On number 8 in attachment B, number 6 in attachment B. The question asks, what areas do you feel needs or needed more focus? And I wonder if those could be adjusted to more Likert scale slider type options to say for each content area, maybe this needs more focus, maybe I'd be okay with less focus, or maybe it's okay as it is. And I also would suggest that in the first attachment, attachment A, the survey for educators, that the question about possibly reducing or removing requirements be put a little bit closer to the question about adding requirements, because as it is right now, there would be a couple of questions maybe in between those two. I think it works better if those are side by side.
15 seconds.
But that's all of my feedback on the content. I appreciate the feedback here from others as well, would support it. And in terms of timing, I wonder if putting it out in the fall would be better to reach people. Thank you.
And I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other comments, Steve, before we move on to item 6?
Thank you. I appreciate the good feedback. This is good. So I will take that back and study up on the Likert scale some more just to make sure I've got it down and work with SurveyMonkey to get that in there and to rearrange that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the update regarding the Workforce Development Action Plan. Steve, would you provide us with an overview?
Yes, so we do an update on the action plan at every workforce committee. And last time, I think this was suggested for this item too. I know it was suggested for the pathway, doing kind of a project plan per se to show what kind of where we're looking at the dates and times of some of the things that we've identified as short-term, long-term goals in the original workforce development plan. So I have created a new presentation to kind of give you an idea of what I think we can, these items that we have on there, when we might address them. So, and this is for your review. And as you see, I have the different tasks items that we have identified before. Then with the status, where they are at, and then an update as to what, basically a status update. So you'll see in there many of the items we're working on, many of the items that we have identified are working are part of the pathway process that we're working on right now. And so we'll keep updating those as we move forward. There was one on there though. I have on item 9, it's talking about creating outreach materials and organize outreach events for high schoolers or undergraduates to inform those concerning career and mental health. Since we do have an outreach and education committee now, I'm thinking that might be more appropriate into that. So I did make a suggestion on that on the update, is moving that discussion over to that committee. Additionally, on the next one, 10, it was explore the possible modifications to the exam retake fees and initial license fees to kind of reduce the financial burden. I was thinking that maybe we table that conversation right now because we are looking at a reduction in fees. We will be discussing that coming up the next board meeting. So that will definitely be a conversation we could, maybe it's more legitimate later on in a year now from when we start looking at our fees again to see what we have to do with them. So really those are the two kind of outstanding updates. The rest, looking at 11 through 14, bringing those to in some form and fashion to the October 23rd meeting to discuss and start beginning discussions on those. And that's the update.
Great, thank you. And I think it makes sense to move that one item over to the Outreach and Education Committee and put it on hold as well. On the other item, Dr. Walker.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Wendy and Steve. I just love this plan. I just love how you broke it down and everything that you shared today. So just looking forward to just moving along with this. Great progress.
Any other comments from board members? Okay. Seeing none. Steve, do we have any comments in the room?
We do not.
Okay. Moderator, do we have any comments online?
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the action plan, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. Are there any comments on the plan? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and moving on to item 7, suggestions for future agenda items. Do we have any members who wish to suggest additional agenda items for future board meetings? Seeing none, do we have anyone in the in-person audience that has an agenda item for a future board meeting?
No.
Okay, moderator, do we have anyone online wishing to comment?
Thank you. Certainly we do. But as a reminder, if anyone would like to suggest an item for a future agenda, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Call-in users can press *3. We have a request for comment from Elise Springer. Elise, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You'll have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. And you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Alrighty. Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Elise Springer. I am a volunteer member with PSI California. That's Postpartum Support International California. I've spoken quite a few times. No matter how many times I've done this, for whatever reason, I still get nervous. So bear with me. I'm going to try to get through it. This is a request for the Workforce Development Committee to please consider AB 2581, which requires the Board of Behavioral Sciences to consider including perinatal mental health, maternal mental health as a continuing education unit and extra training. Currently, there are only about 1,000 qualified professionals certified and trained in perinatal mental health in the state of California. As you know, we have about 420,000 births per year. That means that's about 800,000 parents. 1 in 3 parents in California struggle, 1 in 3 birthing parents, I should say, and actually that number is higher amongst Medicaid patients. And for example, about 45% of those 400,000 babies are covered by the Medicaid program. There is not enough workforce to cover this concern and issue. And we're really, really hoping, I know we've come back several times. We just keep coming back. We'd really like the committee to give us a full time to share more information. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I do not see any other raised hands at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And next is item 8, public comment for items not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Do any board members have comments for items not on the agenda? Seeing none. Do we have any?
I had a question.
Sure.
And tell me if I'm I know I'm out of order, but I wanted to ask, on that survey we had just talked about recently, it was for LMFT and LPCC. So this, is there anything that's going to go for the LCSW or even maybe LEP?
Because we're really focusing on just LMFT, LPCC education requirements right now, not really at this time.
Any particular reason? Just out of curiosity.
LCSW education, you have a good.
So LCSW education, there's a nationally accepted, you have to have CSWE accreditation. So that's why the requirements aren't spelled out point by point like the other two. For LMFT and LPCC, we don't require a national accreditation that's specific to the profession, which means that there's more of a need to spell everything out, whereas for LCSW, it's assumed that the accreditation gets that in the program.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. But I would say with that last question, one of those last questions, as far as getting feedback from like, people who might be interested in participating, that would be kind of nice to have for, the other professions too, as far as like social workers and educational psychologists, if we could have a group of people who'd be open to giving feedback too. So, that's all.
Thank you. Do we have
So
any?
excuse me, this is legal counsel. So
Sure.
since that topic was brought up again, can we go back and see if there's any people in the public who would like to comment on what was just stated by Board Member Uribe?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Do we have any in-person comments on Board Member Uribe's comments?
None in here.
Okay. Do we have any comments online?
Is the moderator, if anyone would like to make a comment on the comment that Member Uribe just offered, you may look for the hand icon and click that. Our calling users can press *3 to raise their hands. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Then we have, we'll go back to in-person audience members who might have comments for items not on the agenda.
None here.
Okay. And moderator, do we have any online audience members with comments for items not on the agenda?
Let's find out. We've opened up the public comment feature. If anyone would like to make a comment on something that was not on the agenda, you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. Any comments for something that you did not see on the agenda? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, our next agenda item is adjournment. Thank you everyone for participating today. As a reminder, our next board meeting will be on May 8th and 9th in Sacramento, and we hope to see you then.
You
Thank
have
you.
a good day. Have a good weekend.
Bye.